I am joined now by the legendary former Kentucky baseball head coach Keith Madison on the Hit It to Hoover podcast. Coach, how are you doing? Welcome on the show.
Yeah, doing very well. Thanks for having me, Mitch.
Absolutely, it's an honor. How's everything going? How excited are you for this upcoming baseball season?
I'm excited because it's just I guess part of the rhythm of life that I've been in for so many years that when the middle of February rolls around, I'm getting ready for baseball. So I did that for so long professionally. It's still a part of me, and so I'll be watching the Cats play down in North Carolina this weekend and hoping they get off to a good start.
Coach, I want to, before we'll talk about your career, but I do want to ask you about this team. Obviously, last season, Kentucky had a remarkable run down there in Hoover at the SEC tournament. You know, heading into this season, what are you hearing around the program, and how excited are you for the future of Kentucky baseball?
Well, actually, Coach Mangione invited me to speak to the team on Tuesday, and that was a great experience. Really, a great group of young men. It got me more excited about this season than I've previously been for a long time. Just a wonderful group of guys, and they're from all over the country. A lot of Kentucky boys on there too, but there's also kids from Arizona and Canada and a lot of other places. But it seems like a great group. A lot of new players. There's going to be a lot of new faces in the lineup. We have several pitchers returning, but it looks like the lineup will probably have about 8 new players out there in that lineup. So it'll be different.
Coach, I want to ask you, and then it's kind of a segue into your career. I want to ask you, what makes Kentucky baseball so special? We saw it down there in Hoover when they made the run. The Big Blue Nation showed up and supported the guys. But what makes Kentucky baseball so unique?
Well, I just think that the Big Blue Nation is awesome. I mean, they follow all the teams. Of course, we're known as a basketball school, and Coach Stoops has done a tremendous job with football. But all the sports, if you attend the games, you're going to see a lot of Wildcat fans there, and I think Kentucky fans are very passionate. We live in a state; it's a great place to live, but we really don't have any major professional sports in our state. We don't have an NBA team. We don't have a Major League Baseball team. We don't have an NFL football team. So it just seems to me that the state of Kentucky, for a large part, just really gets into the Kentucky Wildcats, no matter which sport it is.
Coach, this is kind of the segue over, but obviously everybody knows your track record, the winningest coach in Kentucky baseball history. And I've always wanted to ask you, how did you end up as a head coach at the University of Kentucky?
That's a long story, but I was a very young guy. I had coached 2 years of high school baseball in Central Florida after a minor league baseball career. Graduated from Western Kentucky University. Went down to Central Florida and coached high school ball, and then I got a really good break. I was asked to be a graduate assistant at Mississippi State University, where the legendary Ron Polk was the coach. And that was just a big break for me. Getting to learn under a guy like Coach Polk to actually coach in the SEC. He actually turned the entire pitching staff over to me and let me coach those guys. We went to a regional that year. We were very close to making it to the World Series, but did not make it. But just had a great group to work with. But I remember towards the end of that season, Mitch, I was getting on the bus. I think we were going down to Auburn or someplace, and Coach Polk said, "Hey, did you hear the Kentucky job was open?" This is back in the spring of 1978. And I said, "Yeah, Coach, I think I did hear something about that." He said, "You're a Kentucky boy. You should send your resume in." And I still remember saying this. I said, "Coach, I'm 26 years old. I'm not going to have a chance." He said, "Hey, send your resume in. You never know." Well, meanwhile, I was being interviewed for a junior college job over in Illinois. My parents live near Mammoth Cave National Park near Brownsville, Kentucky, not too far from Bowling Green. So I decided I was going to come up from Starkville and spend the night with my parents, and then my wife and I were going to drive over to Illinois and interview for this junior college job. So while we were over there, everything went well. They offered me the job, and then driving back through Illinois with my wife Sharon, I was so excited about getting to coach at the junior college level. She said, "You mean you like it here?" And I said, "Yeah, I like it. They've got a brand new baseball facility, and I'm going to get to coach at the junior college level." And she said, "There's nothing here but corn." And I was good with that because I grew up on a farm and grew up in the country, but she was not good with that. And I thought it just planted a seed that maybe I should not be so quick to accept this job opportunity. So we traveled back to my parents' house in Brownsville that evening, and so when we got there, I was talking to my dad about the interview, and I said, "You know what I think I'm going to do, Dad? I think I'm going to call Cliff Hagan and see if the Kentucky job is still open." And my dad was one of those guys that listened to Kaywood Ledford, and he was a diehard Kentucky fan too. So he said, "You're going to call Cliff Hagan?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to call Cliff Hagan." So I dialed information, got the athletic department number. Somehow I got through to Mr. Hagan. And I said, "Mr. Hagan, I'm coaching at Mississippi State. I'm the pitching coach, graduate assistant, and I sent my resume in, and I wanted to see if the baseball coaching job is still open." And he said, "Yes, it is." He said, "We've narrowed it down." And I said, "Well, I would love to talk to you about that job." And he said, "Can you be here at 10 o'clock in the morning?" So I said, "Sure." So I drove from Brownsville to Lexington, about a 2.5-hour drive, and met with Mr. Hagan. I thought it went fairly well and didn't think I would get the job. Just was excited to meet Cliff Hagan and at least to get an interview for the job. So Sharon and I drove all the way back down to Starkville, Mississippi. And as soon as we opened the door to our apartment, the phone was ringing. And I picked up the phone, and it was Mr. Hagan. He said, "Hey, if you're still interested in this job, it's yours." And I just about had a heart attack. So I go in and tell Sharon, she's in the living room, and I go in and I said, "Hey, that was Cliff Hagan. He just offered the Kentucky job to me." And she started crying, and I said, "What in the world is wrong? This is the most exciting days of my life." And she said, "Well, I'm pregnant." So I found out that I was going to get the job in Kentucky and that I was going to be a father in the same hour. And it was overwhelming, to be honest with you. But right after the baseball season at Mississippi State, we packed a U-Haul and traveled to Lexington, and we've been in this area ever since. That was summer of 1978.
Coach, that's one of the most remarkable stories I've ever heard, and it kind of leads me into this. And obviously you were around Kentucky for many great seasons, but I want to ask you one memory, two memories that really stick out to you as your time as the head coach at University of Kentucky. What are some of those memories?
Wow, Mitch, I tell you, I've had so many good experiences, and just really feel blessed to have had the opportunity to coach at my home state school and the school that I've really loved all those years. There's so many experiences, but one thing I do remember, since I'm talking back in 1978, I remember my first team meeting in late August of the summer of '78. Returning players were coming back, and I was really fortunate in that Tuffy Horn and the coach before me had recruited some really good people to be in that program, but I really didn't know what to expect. And having played in the Reds organization, and back in those days, Sparky Anderson had some really strict rules about how you wore your hair, how you wore your uniform, how you conducted yourself. And then I get to Mississippi State, and Coach Polk was the same way. And then fast forward, I go into this first meeting in August in Lexington with my team, and this was long before the internet and cell phones or anything like that. So I really didn't have a good concept of who I was going to inherit. But these guys came in, and they had some of them had Fu Manchu mustaches. A couple of guys were wearing cowboy hats. One guy even brought his guitar in, and I felt like I was meeting with Creedence Clearwater Revival rock group instead of a baseball team. But I will say these guys responded so well to what I wanted to do with the program. And they were so easy to coach, and they were so hungry to learn because they had finished last in the SEC in 1970, in the spring of '78, and they were just really hungry to win. They felt like they could do it, and being young and naive, I was only 26 years old at the time. I felt like, man, this is a wonderful opportunity to coach in the SEC, and I'm going to give it my all. And I brought along a young assistant coach by the name of John Butler, and he and I just worked so hard in planning practices and getting everything we could out of these young men. And as I mentioned, they were so hungry to win. They just whatever we told them to do, they did it. And so that spring, we finished second in the division and broke the school record for wins. And basically the same group the year before broke the school record for losses. So it was an incredible first year. That's one great memory I have. And then, oh man, I can just think of so many. I remember, playing Stanford in the finals of the NCAA regionals and facing Mike Messina, who went on to become a great pitcher for the New York Yankees. But he beat us and prevented us from going to Omaha that year. But it was just a tremendous year that we had, 1988. And then I remember breaking the school record for wins and 4 different times. We just kept, getting better. We had some off years during that span too, but mostly it was just new territory of people really knowing about Kentucky baseball. And because I remember, Mitch, when I first came here, there were people in town, even UK sports fans, that didn't know Kentucky had a baseball program because they just didn't get any notoriety. One thing that helped me a lot in getting the program on the map, so to speak, was my friendship with a man by the name of Oscar Combs. Of course, Oscar he started Cat's Paws back in the 70s, and he loved baseball. He was a huge Cincinnati Reds fan, and he found out that I'd played minor league baseball in the Reds organization, and we just hit it off. And so he gave us tremendous publicity. And back in those days, again, before the internet, just about every UK fan received
well as Ethan Leche from Delgado Community College, a third baseman, super athletic, physical, a tough South Louisiana kid that I think is going to play terrific in the field, and really help us offensively, and a good runner as well. And so those are, 3 guys immediately, some transfers from the position player side, I think that are going to help us. And then, on the mound, there's a transfer, Xavier Rivas from the University of Indianapolis.
Over a little bit. I like to ask all the coaches and former coaches
if we were to start today, he would be one of the 3
been the toughest place to play in the SEC as your head coach?
Also,
as your coaching
you're talking about maybe the number 2 ranked recruiting class that's on campus presently. That just came in this fall, and probably led by freshman Grayson Saunier from Collierville High School that has been outstanding. Even last weekend he was outstanding and pitched 2 shutout innings in his first stint in inter-squad games, but pitched great all fall, and a highly touted kid that had to turn down 7 figures to get to college. But we're certainly glad he did, and a guy that's got an opportunity probably to start on the weekend as well. And some others, J.T. Quinn, another highly touted freshman pitcher from Tampa, Florida, Berkeley Prep. Sam Takoyan, a big right-hander, 6'7" right-hander from California, and others. And so again, I think it's a good mix. It's a little different team than last year. Last year I thought we were very old. This year's team, I think, has got a great mix of some, as I mentioned, some veterans, some guys that have played in Omaha, guys that have had success, guys like Hunter Elliott and Jack Doherty, but also some new faces, some freshmen, some transfers.
Country, and obviously things have developed now with the NIL, and Ole Miss has got the amazing Grove Collective that really helps out all the student athletes. How has that benefited you guys at baseball, and how have you seen it develop over the last 6 months to 12 months?
And they know something about every player
from an NIL.
Yes, sir. From the NIL standpoint, from baseball,
either a funny bark or something cute to say about everything, and they're very loud. So that's a tough place to play. Of course, Florida's a tough place to play. The SEC is so phenomenal in baseball that everywhere you go, you're gonna run into high energy, passionate fans that want their team to win. So that's why so many young players want to play in this league.
Coach, last question I have for you. I want to ask about what does Kentucky, University of Kentucky, mean to you personally as a legendary head coach of the university?
That's a great question, and I hope my answer can do that question justice, because I love UK so much. Even though I went to Western Kentucky, I was one of those kids that when I went to Western, I took back in those days, I took my transistor radio with me, and I listened to the Cats play while I watched the Hilltoppers play. Because I'd grown up, my brother and I would listen to, as I mentioned earlier, we'd listen to Kay Wood on the radio, and that was just a neat thing for two sons and a father to do together. And I remember hearing my dad talk about, Lou Seropoulos, and Frank Ramsey, and Cliff Hagan, and all these great players that had played in the past. So, I have that background like many, many Kentucky kids do, but also having coached there. And most of the years that I coached at Kentucky, my office was in Memorial Coliseum. So I was really good friends with Bill Kitely, who was Mr. Wildcat. And I remember going over to the equipment room and just grabbing some snacks from him and sitting down and just talking about all the great Wildcats that he saw come through from Cotton Nash to Kyle Macy and Goose Gibbons and all those guys, and we just had great conversations. And then I'd walk out on the Memorial Coliseum floor and see all the banners that were hanging, and then I would remember watching the state high school basketball tournament on that gym and just dreaming of the day that I could perhaps play on the hardwood there at Memorial Coliseum. Fate took me in a different direction in baseball, but basketball was my first love, like a lot of Kentucky kids. So I have all of those memories and traditions that just give me a tremendous amount of pride in being affiliated with the University of Kentucky. And I think winning for Kentucky meant more to me than I can't imagine any other coach, believing that winning meant more to them, because when I put that Kentucky jersey on my chest and had Kentucky written across the front of it, knowing that I represented such a special university and such a special athletic program. It just meant the world to me. So I had a great sense of pride and respect for the traditions of the University of Kentucky. So it was really a dream come true to be able to coach at UK for so many years.
He is Coach Keith Madison. Coach, thank you so much for taking the time. Join us on the Hit It to Hoover podcast. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much, Mitch. Thanks for having me on.